Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this live. We're going to be talking about how to build your network, how to get a good acceptance rate, and I'm sure you'll let us know where you're joining from in the chats. That would be awesome. So let me know where you're joining from. If you're joining on Facebook, you're on YouTube, you're on LinkedIn, it'd be great to know where you're joining from. I have Vasco with me today. Vasco, do you want to just say hi to everybody? You've not been on a live in ages.
Yeah, that's true. Hi, everyone. Great to be here again.
Yeah,
I
so
haven't seen anybody since last year, practically.
and Vasco's been locked away at home for the last few days because he's had COVID. That thing that everybody thought had gone away, Vasco got back. He's been jabbed like 17 times. He's probably 90% COVID vaccine, but he got COVID.
Yep.
But Vasco, it's good to have you back and nice to have you on here today. So
Thanks.
We're going to be talking all things growing your network. So a lot of people might take this for granted, but actually it's the growing your network piece is actually the domino that helps everything else work, that gets you the reach and the visibility with the right people, that unlocks the relationship, that gets the conversations. The whole thing kind of rests on growing your network. And we're going to talk about this today. We've come on a little bit early just to make sure the stream works, and it seems to be working. Darren seems to be saying that he's having a few audio issues, so we'll just check on that and see how that's working, and then we'll be ready to go. Yeah, it seems to be working. I can hear it. So that's all good. So Darren, you might be just on a delay there. Right. So first things first, Vasco, we're going to talk about, obviously, the domino is if you grow your network with the right people, it unlocks everything. All the success comes out of just growing your network with the right people. And Vasco, I'm going to ask you a simple, easy question here, right?
Okay.
Who are the right people? Who are the right people you should be connecting with?
The right people you should be connecting with is the people you want to do business with, the people that you want to see your product and your solutions, and those around them, because that's another thing. I recently was just talking to a guy that he was only connecting to those people and nothing else. And anybody surrounding that person, so there were CEOs, so directors, marketing managers, he wasn't connecting with them. And then he was surprised that his network wasn't growing.
Yeah, and this is the real important point. Whether you're a salesperson kind of listening and watching this, or whether you're a solopreneur, small business owner, this is really, really important, right? First off, a lot of senior level decision makers will not just connect with randoms, not unless they seek some kind of relevance. And one of the ways, big tip number one here, one of the ways you can be more relevant is, it's so simple. Grow from the ground up within an organization. So if you want to connect with a CEO, think about who's a little bit lower down, and everybody goes, oh, I don't want to talk to people who aren't the decision maker. The days of the CEO making a decision without consulting other members of the team are in the 1970s. The average company now has a buying committee of, depending on which country you're in, but the UK is pretty bad. 13 people are consulted or involved in some way in the buying decision. If you go to the CEO and you miss out all of those other people who will influence that decision, who will throw their ideas into the pot, you're kind of missing a trick. So I always tell people, one, for ease, it's easier to connect with people a little lower down and grow your network and build the trust upwards, not just try and go in at the top and work down.
So basically, Dean, it's not only the decision makers, but also the decision influencers.
Decision influencers, people who have any degree of influence or might have influence in that decision, you should be talking to, you should be connecting with, but connect from the bottom up, because people, I know it sounds really strange, but people are more likely to connect with you just because you have more people in common who you both know. So if I connect with the EA and the marketing manager and who, all those different people, and then connect with the CEO, I'm more likely to get connected. It's just a very simple principle that you want to have the whole buying committee connected and aware of who you are. And that will influence your overall connection acceptance rate. So that's the simple thing. Number one, you should be connected not just to the exact person who signs the check or signs the PO, but who else is contributing to that decision. You want to be connected to them too, because that will open up the more doors. And likewise, there are people who influence decisions, who throw names into the ring. And I'm sure you've had a scenario where you've lost an opportunity because somebody else suggested somebody else. So be connected with all of the right people, not just the ultimate sign-off decision maker. I think that's a given. But Vasco, this whole session really is devoted to how do we increase our connection rate? And I might share my screen. I might share my screen in a minute and just walk through some of the things that I see. But often, I don't want this to turn into a conversation about your LinkedIn profile, but often, six out of 10 times, the message is irrelevant for the connection request. You heard me there, right? You heard me there. Six out of 10 times, it's totally irrelevant what message you put there, because the prospect will actually look at your profile to determine whether we've done all the research on this. We look at hundreds, if not thousands of profiles every week and every month. 6 out of 10 times, people go to your profile to decide whether to connect or ignore or reject your request. Vasco, what do you see some of the common mistakes with profiles that could be harming connection rate?
That's a very good and valid point, because people tend to forget that as they transition from analog to digital sales to social selling, you have become now the front shop window of your business, of your solution, of your brand. So you need to have an image that people can relate to. It needs to be friendly, it needs to be approachable, and it needs to look professional. So that when people see your request, they go, I wouldn't mind connecting to this person. Then there's another thing, which is the headline that you have under your name, because that also shows, and I don't know if you want to share that, Dean, an image of that, but when you send a connection request, what people see is your face, they see your name, and then they see the headline. And what you put on that headline is critical for people to say, I want to connect with this person or not. One, we always talk about the 4-letter word, but there's a 5-letter word you shouldn't have there. And probably you want to talk a bit more about that, Dean, which is sales. Don't have the word sales. Because when you put the word sales on your headline, people know that sooner or later they're going to be hammered by a salesy something. So just say what you can do for your prospect. How can you help them sort out their pain? How can you be a positive in their business life?
Yeah, and when we're looking at that, maybe what I'm going to do is I am going to share my screen. So hopefully, let me just show you this when LinkedIn loads. It's great fun. I've got so many tabs and windows open now. It's literally
welcome to the club.
Confusing the life out of me. So when I look through my connection requests here, you'll notice, hopefully, Matt, this is showing on screen now. Can you see it, Vasco?
Yeah. It's perfect.
So when I'm looking on screen, right, you get a connection request and they actually look like this, right? This is what they look like. Yeah, I've got thousands of them sat here, right? And what you're really looking for is you're looking for what stands out for you and what draws your eye and attention. And what we don't want to do is get people to try and decide whether to accept or reject our connection request just by what they see here. If they go through to your profile, that will actually get you a better result. So one of the ways that, obviously, we're doing a mirror effect here where we're going to see a mirror of a mirror of a mirror. When you send a connection request, this is the primary stuff that they're going to see. This header image, your name and your headline. And what most people do is they don't create any curiosity in this to get them away from the connection request. So it sounds counterintuitive, but if you get people onto your profile, it'll actually be way more effective for you. So often it comes down to getting them away from your profile comes down to those 3 lines of text, your name, the headline, and your profile picture. That's the first thing. Once you've got past that, it then becomes about what they see on your profile, what the relevance is. Is it intriguing and is it interesting? And people will spend about 10 seconds here, and then they'll come down to the featured section. And this is like your buyer education zone. If you get them to here, it's highly likely they're going to accept. But what most people do, and we've got to show you some other stats and tactics here, what most people do is they never optimize this bit for the connection. They optimize it for how it might look on the feed, or they don't even optimize it at all. They just put a job title and a company name in there, and they miss the opportunity to create the curiosity to get people to move from the connection request to your profile. Once you get them there, it changes the game. It changes the way it is, because then you can show who you're relevant to. Now, my header here obviously is being taken over by the live, but actually this header would actually be branded up and it would make people curious about what you do and who you do it for and all that kind of stuff. So if people see relevance in the connection, it makes sense. If you look like, if your profile gives off vibes of, I'm a salesperson and the only thing I do on LinkedIn is come on here and pitch people, people can smell it because they can see what your profile's like, how much attention you pay to it, and that vibe will actually give off, you're going to sales pitch me, and give them an inkling if that's what it will be. So you don't want people deciding here. You want them to actually click through and actually pay attention and connect. That's the key bit. You want to do that bit. If you don't get that bit done, it's not going to work. It's not going to perform for you. And I'm going to try and keep on top of the questions and comments as best I can. Vasco, talk to us about what's the best connection message or what's the worst connection messages?
That is a good one, because today I was talking about that as well, which is make it short and to the point, and not just, I saw you in my feed and I want to connect with you sort of thing. Make it memorable, make it short and to the point. And the last thing you want is to get a message that's 3 paragraphs long. And we get many of those.
Yeah. So when it comes to connection messages, I think the cool thing is that AI has made everything.
Oh, you've just opened
smart.
a new door.
Yeah, it has. The cool thing is that AI has made everything clever. The downside to this is, of course, we can spot generic messaging. So I get connection requests all the time. I can see people joining now. I get people all the time connecting with me and they say, "Hi, Dean, you have an impressive profile. Would you like to connect and network together?" And it's like, if your connection message could be said by somebody else, or you could literally copy and paste it and send it to somebody else, people will spot that. So one of the classic examples of mine that I use is on my company page. My company has a registered trademark, the R symbol. Yeah. And I know when somebody's sending me a generic message, and you might want to do this, by the way, if you want to, it's worth having a go. So when somebody sends me a message on email or LinkedIn or a connection request, and they go, "Oh, Dean, I see you're the CEO of MAVERRIK." Yeah. I immediately know they've used automation and they've not really checked their data, because nobody would actually write MAVERRIK with the R symbol on a connection message.
Even worse, some of the automation that's out there will not read the R, and you get these funny,
Gobbledygook. Yeah. So anytime I'm giving off template vibes, yeah, I'm actually trying to, people will guess, is this a real person? Is this not a real person? And then sometimes it's better the devil you know, they'll come back and not. So what we found is, if you've got something really relevant to say, like you've got a couple of people in common, mention their names, or you know somebody quite well who's connected with them, it's worthwhile mentioning something specific. Yeah, specific and unique to them massively increases the connection acceptance rate. So if you can find something that's specific, so, you know, one of the things that I'll look for is anything that if I know somebody in my network, I mean, actually know, I don't mean just an accumulation of connections, somebody I actually know, I might put their name in the connection request and say, "Oh, see you connected with Paul. I had a chat with him the other week. I just thought I'd connect with you because we've got a few people in common." That would be relevant, as long as you know the person, so it doesn't make you look stupid. Other things that could be good is if they're going to an event or a trade show and you're going to the trade show and you say, "I spotted you're a speaker at the trade show, or you're exhibiting at the trade show, so I thought I'd connect," and mention the trade show. That can be quite relevant. So anytime you've got something personal to say, rather than personalized. So the distinction I make between personal and personalized is, personal is something unique to an individual. Personalized is a customized template. And a lot of the customized templates just give off copy and paste vibes, and people can detect it. Let me ask you in the live here, how many of you can actually detect when somebody's sending you a generic message? Just comment in the chat wherever you're watching and tell me, can you detect generic messaging? Let me know. Can you detect generic messaging? So when you get it, can you detect generic messaging? Just put it in the chat wherever you are. Can you tell when somebody's using a template?
I'm sure many can go onto their inbox now and find quite a few.
Yeah. Not just in connection messages either, Vasco. It's everything. We can tell. So yeah, we can really tell, we can really spot when somebody is just basically copy and paste. And Lee's just mentioned most of the time, the vast majority of times you can detect it. What else could you put in the messaging that's a bit more
Dean,
interesting?
you said two interesting things, which is keep it professional and relevant to the person's profile. And the other thing you added was add a personalized touch whenever possible.
Yeah.
And always personalize it, always.
Now, there is something you can do which is a little bit more quirky, and Terry has done this, and maybe I'll get him onto one of these and he'll talk about it. Terry's created his own unique message where he actually says in it, I can't remember exactly what he says, but if people message us, we can send him what he says. It's along the lines of, I'm connecting because I'm genuinely interested. I'm not planning to sales pitch you. Take a look at what I'm doing. If you see the relevance, let's connect. It's something quite bold, but he's quite clear. And Amanda's put, I prefer blank, no message. Amanda, so do I. I found that about 25% of people will just connect with you with no message, literally no message. But that then means what they do is they look at your profile and it's down to the profile. I'll just say here as well, just a couple of people, if you've had a situation where you're under 1,000 connections or your connection count's quite low, you will find it quite difficult to connect at the beginning. That's just the nature of the beast, because I think we're all a little bit skeptical of why has somebody got such a low connection rate on LinkedIn, because it's so easy to grow your network compared to other channels. Vasco, you obviously coach clients all day long in growing their network and social selling. What would you say? What would you say that it's difficult? What would you say the challenge is? Why do people not connect with small accounts?
Well, a number of things. First of all, it's become more difficult now because you are limited to the number of connections requests you can send out. 2 years ago, it was much, much easier. But bearing that in mind, the thing is about doing it and doing it every single day. So if you do 20 connection requests per day, by the end of the week, you've done the 100. That's simple. And it's very easy to do the 20. First of all, don't overthink, and then find the right people, the people that really needs to see you and talk to you. And basically just doing it every single day. And I've had the opportunity, in fact, 2 weeks ago, of a person that I was asked by the Princess Trust to help. She had 4 connections. After talking to me, it went up to 5 because I was included. And I checked this morning and she had 110.
Wow.
Because why? Every single day she's sending out connection requests. And she's got a very, how could I say, low profile, let's put it this way, because of what she does. But the thing is, because she does it every day, she's been able to grow her connections. And I think most people just make it a big problem, a big issue. You remember, Dean, in the beginning of all of this journey, we used to sit at night, you at your place and me at mine, going through using our mobile phones and connecting and connecting and connecting.
Yeah, we were a bit batshit back then. It was a long time ago. We've reformed since then.
Yeah,
But
I had an airline up to you then.
Me and Vasco used to play connection competition, basically, years back, as a kind of quest as who could get to the top first. And we used to play this game. And whilst it's silly, whilst it's like, it's not about numbers, it's about quality. The more people you are connected to, the more content reach you have. The more people that you have connected, the more influence you can have. So there is all of these benefits of having a big network. And of course, there's no point filling your network with people who can't buy from you. It doesn't make sense. But there is a point in having a full network of people who can potentially influence decisions, refer business. All of those people should be in your world. Now, for another webinar, for another live, we'll actually talk about, okay, how do we turn connections into clients? And if you want to know more about that, go to our website, MAVERRIK, and you can check out all the events we do. But the key is, the bigger your network, the more reach and influence you can have, and the more opportunities you've got to talk to people. Vasco, when it comes to the whole connecting piece, I want to just talk about the different types of users, because some people go, I'm connecting, I'm growing my network, but nobody ever replies to me. And I'm going to share a slide because I think this slide will be helpful. Let me find it. Can you just talk about like that whole process of finding people, what some of the obscurities around job titles? Because obviously everybody says, oh, I only deal with CEOs. But of course we know that there are lots of people with lots of different job titles, and we miss out opportunities because we're too. Do you remember the guy with the mustache who owns a business? Do you remember?
Yep, totally.
Just talk about the guy who was very picky, so picky he couldn't do any business about who he connected with.
Well, probably I can tell 2 stories, very interesting stories that I'm sure you're going to love. One of them is the guy that I will not mention, but he qualified people in such a way that he came to us and said, Why didn't I get any business? Why isn't nobody talking to me? But he got to a point of qualifying people that we even jokingly said, do they need to have a moustache? Because he wanted just to connect with people that were less than a mile away from his office, because he didn't like driving a car in London and he wanted to walk there. And he got nobody. They just died. But let me just tell you a story about the opposite. And this is an interesting one. Now, I've got a brother, like most of you have. And my brother...
Almost a twin brother. Almost a twin
He
brother.
sounds like me. He's got the same voice, by the way. Our wives, they always mistake us when we speak over the phone. And he's younger than me. And he's got an interesting job that everyone hates. He's a banker. And he came up to me and he had 238 connections then. And he said, nobody's listening to me. And I said, no wonder, because he only chose bankers, CEOs of banks. So every time he did anything, he wasn't getting the message out. So he asked me, could you help me? So I decided to help him. And in 2 years, he's grown his connections to 20,540 something. That's how big it is now. The interesting thing is that I also helped him post, and he did these interesting posts to the point that now he's got a new job offer, because people saw him. Mm-hmm. And the right people. So he was connecting to other banks and other fintechs, and he was connecting not only to the CEO, to all the decision influencers. Mm-hmm. And the decision influencers saw this guy and they said, this is an interesting guy, we need him. Mm-hmm. And that's why they got in touch with him. And funny enough, they also said, and one of the other reasons why was because we saw you had so many connections, you could help us as well reaching other people. And interesting fact, you don't know this one, Dean, he's having the final interview this coming Friday.
So I've got a couple more things I just want to talk about increasing your connection rate. And one of the big ones here is
the zombie.
The 3 types of LinkedIn users. So believe it or not, a lot of the gurus will tell you to connect with people and engage with their content, right? And that's the strategy. The problem is, as of yesterday, during the last 30 days, so from yesterday, the 5th of February to the 5th of January, despite LinkedIn having 1 billion users, 1 billion users, that's 9 zeros, 15 million people posted. Just 15 million in the whole world. 15 million. So again, why posting is such a powerful thing on LinkedIn for another talk. 15 million people posted. So what does that mean? It means that the vast majority of the people we want to do business with, that want to connect with, aren't posting regularly. And probably aren't posting a consistent pattern. So we know that the vast majority of the LinkedIn network are actually lurkers. So they'll share job updates, they'll repost things, they'll comment on posts, they'll like posts, and they're active in sense of they're logging in and scrolling, but there's not much to post and engage with. Now, of course, quick tip, we call this the LCC, like, comment, connect. If you do that to somebody, like, comment, connect, you increase your acceptance rate over the 50% dead easy. But of course, not everybody is actually going to see that, because if they're a lurker, there's no likes you can land, there's no comments you can land, so it's just a connection. So lurkers are the ones you want to connect with. Most of your business and opportunity will come from lurkers, not posters, by the way. A lot of the posters are here to market themselves and sell themselves, so they're definitely not in buying mode. So it's the lurkers where the money is, really. So if you want to connect with lurkers, here's a really important tip. Don't connect in the mornings. Just don't do it. Connect in the late afternoons or early evenings. The reason being is most people don't use LinkedIn in the morning. Yeah. So despite what you see, all of people like me posting and going nuts first thing in the morning, actually lurkers don't do that.
Could I ask you a question then, Dean?
Sure.
Would it help for us to connect with people that've got the little green dot next to their photo?
Yes, but you can't always see it, Vasco. So you can see it sometimes. So if they've got active status on, sometimes you can see it, but you can't always see it if you're not connected. So if they've got the green dot, great, they're active. But lurkers, right? So just give you an idea, the atypical LinkedIn user, atypical, and by that I mean the majority. I don't mean this weird group of people like me and Vasco who are on here from ridiculous o'clock in the morning doing what we do. We are not the average LinkedIn user. So if you make your strategy towards the freaks on LinkedIn, right, you're missing the fact that the freaks are not, they're not, what's the word? Representative of the average user. The average user scrolls, consumes, likes a few things, comments on a few things, reposts a few things. They don't do what I do. So they will come on LinkedIn typically mid-morning and all the way through the late afternoon. That's when they show up on LinkedIn, right? Scrolling. They might go on the train or
during commute times in the afternoon.
Yeah. So they're in and out, in and out, in and out. But atypically, they're more in an afternoon. So if you send your connection requests in the morning, guess what could happen? It could get buried buried below loads of other things. Other people could send connection requests. They could get a load of spammy messages. All sorts of stuff could be going on. And you're in that noise. You want to be the last thing. So aim to send your connection requests later in the day. And then it doesn't get buried. So lurkers are where it's at. These people are really active in the morning, but these people are probably better in an afternoon.
Which are the vast majority?
Yeah. The vast majority of the LinkedIn user base are lurkers, scrollers. They pay attention, they have a look, and then they check out, do their thing. So just by changing the time you connect with people will make a massive difference. So if they are active and they are posting, a like, a comment, and a connect is massive. But actually, if they're a lurker, you want to be connecting later in the day. And then zombie. Now, LinkedIn zombies. So these are the hardest people to engage. They're the hardest. They're almost dead. Right? They're almost dead. They're really tough. Why? Because they might log in once every blue moon. If you look at their profile, go through their activity, there are no signs of life. What this means is generally these zombies, you could try and connect with a lot of people and get no response, or at least not a response quickly. And then what happens is, because they take days, weeks, or months to log in sometimes between sessions, your connection request gets totally lost. Totally lost. So you have a very slim chance of connecting with these people. Now, on the face of it, these two groups look almost identical. Yeah, on the face of it, because there's very few posts. But these people here, there's no likes, there's no comments, there's no reposts, there's no nothing in 30 days. Zero activity. And if you try and connect with them, it's highly likely all of your connection attempts will basically get lost.
And it's interesting because when you go into their profile, it will say in the activity, they have not posted in the last 90 days.
Yeah, but I'm thinking somebody who's not logged in for a month, a zombie, whereas a lurker might have a few bits and bobs and a few bits of activity that can tell you, oh, they are here. A zombie, there's nothing in 30 days. But there are a lot of people who don't give off vibes that they're here, but you want to focus on the lurkers, where you at least know they're here because you know that there's a chance they're going to see your connection request or they're going to see your message.
And most of these zombies are people that just have the LinkedIn page as a landing page, just to say, I'm here, I'm in the world. Nothing else.
They're here, but effectively until they need a job, they're not going to take it seriously.
True.
So why is this important to know the difference? Why is it important to look? Because if you're sending a ton of connection requests to zombies, it's going to have a massive impact on your acceptance rate because they're just not going to see it. And if you connect with posters, right? I'm not saying you don't. You can follow me, you can connect with me. But obviously we're all here for our own agenda. The posters have a very clear and defined agenda. And it's very focused what they're trying to do, the posters. And of course, if you want to get engagement and interaction and conversations, but they're more friendship-based conversations, posters are great. That's like the inner community of LinkedIn. But where your money is actually in connecting with lurkers, which might be a bit trickier to connect with, but they're pretty much... Everybody tells me, a lot of my contacts who I've either trained on LinkedIn or they're doing really well on LinkedIn and we've met on LinkedIn, they all say the same thing. The money comes from the lurkers. It's not the posters.
Well, Dean, if you recall, probably our biggest client was a lurker.
Yeah. My biggest client was a LinkedIn lurker, rarely posting, rarely interacting, rarely doing anything. They were just liking a few things and reposting a few things every now and then. They got hooked on LinkedIn. This year became a blue top voice on LinkedIn, blue top voice. They post every single day now, all day, every day, very active on the platform because they've seen the size of the opportunity. But most people are not in that space. Most people, 90% of them are lurkers. And so just simple things like using your profile to help people decide whether to accept or reject you. Simple things like sending your connection request later in the day can make a massive difference to what you're doing. So these are just key things to think about to actually build more success into what you're doing. 10-minute webinar on a loop. Oh, we're catching up now. We've had a few glitches with comments coming through slowly, so I'm getting questions really late. And then the other thing I would think about as well when you're improving your connection acceptance rate is be careful of third-degree connections. Third-degree connections can be the biggest enemy problem for you. And this again comes back to getting your network established. So I'll just show you quickly on Sales Navigator. I'll share my screen and show you on Sales Navigator. Because if you're not doing this, what will happen?
You're not sharing, Dean.
I'm setting it up.
Okay.
So just for everybody's benefit, obviously first degree connections are your actual connections. Second degree connections are connections of connections. Third degree and third degree plus are effectively people where you've got nobody in common. Right? Nobody in common. I know it sounds really simplistic, but when you connect and you see this underneath, it might seem to you like, oh, why does that matter? But actually, that's really significant. It's really significant that you have some people in common. And so you're more likely to get a rejection from a third just because of this thing here. And it's not, oh, that's missing so they don't accept me. It's, oh, that's present so they do accept you. Because on second degrees, you have that. On third degrees, you don't have that. So third degrees, they're less likely to accept, but second, they're more likely because there might be a name that they recognize there, right? And that's the key bit. Third degree people are very unlikely to accept you. And so if, say, for an example, you want to connect with somebody who's a third degree, so let's say, for an example, Setelm, I don't know this company here.
Setelm,
right? But let's say I wanted to connect with somebody at this company. I would look at how can I build out my network in that company first, because I'm bound to have somebody who's a second degree. So I could just look for a few second degrees at first, get connected to a few second degrees, and there's a couple there. So I'm a second degree with a CEO, second degree, second degree, second degree. So focus on growing through your network first. And that will protect you from the negative impacts of connecting with thirds or trying to
Dean,
accept it.
an interesting thing. Lee has just asked two things. So should we only be connect with second degree connections? And the other one is asked, is there a negative if you're not accepted?
So Lee, two very good questions, and the answer to both is yes, right? Should we only connect with seconds? Yes, unless you've got something really relevant to say, like really precisely relevant, right? So in other words, it's a bit different if they're a poster. So let's say you've got a third degree person who's posting and you can comment on their post and like something beforehand and then connect. That's all good because you can do something to make it easier. So if you can like, comment and connect before, you could go for a third. And then in the connection message, I'd probably mention their post that you commented on, and that would massively help. If they're a third with very little activity, that can be quite high risk. They're more likely to either ignore you and reject you. So think about how you could grow your seconds to make them a second. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Dean. If you could explain how, if I'm a third connection, how could you make me come out of being a third connection and becoming a second connection?
Yeah. So I've actually got a slide on that. So I'll share my screen again. I might have to flick through my slides, but I'll find it. So just as a reminder, that's how people would see you when you send a connection request, and you want to use that, your face, the name, and this bit underneath your headline to actually get people to accept you. But let me find my little chart. Here we go. So first degree, right? So Lee, for an example, Lee, just imagine you've got no connections. You've just joined LinkedIn right now. You send me a connection request and I'm a third, but I accept you. So I accept you. So Lee, you've now got one connection, one first degree connection, which is me. So because of that, I bring my 30,000 connections to the table and they all sit down in your second degree network. So you've now got 30,000 people here. So what you want to do is fish in the second degree network for anybody who's relevant. And of course, every time you connect with one of my network, one of those seconds, one of those thirds goes, oh, I know, and they join here. So in theory, what happens is your first degree network gets bigger, your second degree network gets smaller, and your first degree network gets bigger as you grow it, get connections. Your second degree network gets bigger because there's a billion people, but your third degree network gets smaller. So this is a billion people here, LinkedIn. This is how many connections you've got, and that's the difference. So if you've got 900, let's say you had a million one connection, you might have or 10 connections, 100 connections here. You might have a million here and 998,900 and whatever there.
Well, Dean, this comes into the strategy you mentioned right at the beginning today, which is start connecting with people lower down, the influencers, because when you connect to them, you're going to bring the third connections to become your second connections. So if you're trying to connect to a CEO who's a third connection, the strategy is, let me connect with lower down people, like the old days when you used to do analog sales. Okay, for the golden oldies like me, when we used to do analog sales, used to connect and try to talk to first. Who was it? The receptionist at the office block. And if she, got on well with you, you had the doors open in that company, in that business. Same as over here in the social selling world, is if you connect to the lower down people, you are going to turn the higher end people that are third connections into your second connections.
And when we're talking lower down the people, we're not talking bottom of the rung. We're talking the people who may interact with your decision maker on a daily or weekly basis. We're not talking, I'm starting with somebody who, empties.
Well, for example, Dean, the marketing manager.
Yeah, but let's say you want to get to a CEO, you wouldn't go and get the canteen supervisor, but you might get somebody in the finance department. You might get somebody in the purchasing department. You might get somebody in the technical department. The people who would interact, but an influence, and their opinions would be consulted, but they are generally less senior people.
In fact, a very good person is the HR people.
Yeah, they're good as well. Depends at which angle you're going in. But yeah, that's a good, Vasco, you just dropped a massive tip there, by the way, a huge tip there. If you're trying to break into a company or an organization and you're finding that you don't have the depth of connections, look for who the connectors are in that company. Look for who the connectors are. One of them will be HR. They'll probably be connected to a lot of people on LinkedIn. Look for who the connectors are, and connect with them.
Dean, we got 15 minutes.
So any other questions before I wrap up? One thing I was going to say, just for those of you listening, you've obviously seen some of our slides. These are part of our Social Selling Academy, which actually takes you end to end from profile through content, how to create content, generate leads from content, all of that good stuff, through to how to outreach, how to build up conversations, and how to take those conversations offline. And we call it the Social Selling Academy. It's a work on your own, as fast a pace as you want course. And if you want more details of it, DM me. I can send you the details of it. But it's a very simple course that helps you understand LinkedIn, but also put the pieces of the puzzle together in a way that works. So if you want to know more about that, DM me or email me, whichever's easier for you, and I can give you some information about that. Any questions?
Amanda's just asked a question. What's the next number of weekly connection requests?
Amanda, it depends on which account you've got. LinkedIn did this to people recently. So if you have a premium subscription or a Sales Navigator subscription, you can send 100 connection requests a week. And we recommend using them, number one, but we also recommend using them spread over a few days, not all in one go. So that's the first thing. If you're on a free account, now this varies because I've seen people do it slightly differently, but officially it's 25 per week. However, some people have got all the way up to about 60, 70 before they get that nice little message from LinkedIn that you've
reached
commercial limit or whatever it's called. So it depends on what account you've got. And just to say, if anybody wants a free 2-month trial of Sales Navigator, message me or Vasco and we'll get you a 2-month free trial.
Can I drop a bomb?
Go on.
I hear lots of people saying, oh, I've got 3,000 connections. I think I'm good. Interesting thing. You think you have 3,000 connections, but on average, 2/3 of those connections are dead. They're zombies. Mm-hmm. So it means you've got 1,000. Out of those 1,000, half of those are not relevant to what you do today, because this is baggage we're bringing in from our past experiences. So probably you're talking to 300, 500 people. So 3,000 may not be enough.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll tell you one other thing that's fascinating there, Vasco, on that front as well. I've seen where people have said this and they go, "Oh yeah, I've got loads of common, loads of prospects in my network, but they've moved on." We forget that people change jobs. And quick tip here, by the way, it's worth reassessing your network because there's probably people who you know who've moved on to new roles and there's probably new opportunities for you in different companies. So I think that's really important. But also what I would say there as well is when you think about it from the point of view of you've changed industries, I did a sales navigator search with somebody looking through their network to try and identify out of their, I think there were like 4,500 connections. I said, let's identify how many current connections you have who actually fit the criteria of somebody who you could do business with. And we did it. And out of the 4,500, something like that, 4,500, it was like something like 143. And they were like, why? Why would that be an issue? And Melissa, yeah, once you reach a certain point, you start getting picky about it. Quaker, yes.
Lee, can you answer first, Lee, because you asked first? He's got in fact, he's got 3 very good questions.
Yeah. So Lee, why is it negative to have somebody not accept your connection request? Well, LinkedIn judges your acceptance rate against your rejection rate. So there's 2 numbers that it's looking at. And if you get them out of whack, the ratios, in other words, you're not getting a good solid acceptance rate and you're minimizing your rejection rate, you get a restriction. They lock you out.
LinkedIn jail, guys, by the way.
Well, it's worse. LinkedIn jail, the old LinkedIn jail would be your account feels like it's broken. Now LinkedIn jail is you're literally locked out.
It's jail. It's true jail.
Yeah. You can't use LinkedIn. And it starts sometimes with like, oh, it's a couple of hours. Then it'll be a couple of days. Then it'll be you're gone. And we've had a few people come to us saying, can you help me get my account back? And we have somebody on our team who does a lot of that stuff behind the scenes. And we've got some clients their account back, but it's not easy. So Lee, to answer your question, number 1, you want a high acceptance rate because it keeps your account healthy. But number 2, you want to minimize your rejection rate. And there's 2 ways to do that. Number 1 is obviously don't connect with thirds, do all of that stuff we talked about. But the other one is to withdraw your connection requests before you give too many people the opportunity to reject them. So
ideally, Dean, what will be that time frame?
So it depends. It depends on how often you're using your account. LinkedIn's like a muscle, right? If you're using it in a particular way and you're pretty regular with using it in that way, LinkedIn will flex. Yeah. So you can do more if you're more active. But let's say, for an example, you're sending out your 20 connection requests a day. That means inside of 2 weeks, you've got 200 connection requests sent. I'd advise you to never have more than 200 connection requests outstanding and never more than 2 weeks old, at least initially. And what that does, Lee, is whilst you're doing everything to make your acceptances as positive as possible, you're basically pulling back the ones that haven't gone through, depriving the other person of their ability to reject your connection request. So basically, your rejections go down and your acceptances stay high, which means the ratio stays healthy.
And if somebody doesn't connect with you in a space of 2 weeks, it's either because they are zombies or simply because they don't want to connect with you.
Yeah, and it's probably buried. The connection request is probably buried. Now, when you withdraw a connection request, obviously, LinkedIn won't just let you send it again. You have to wait 3 weeks and you can send it again. So there's nothing lost by pulling it. A bit of time's lost, but you can prevent a lot of that by doing some of the things we've talked about today.
Dean, would you like quickly just to answer Kweku, who says 99% of his connections are completely useless. Feel sorry for you, and they are from past industries, and he can't figure out how to get rid of them. Well, he's got to. I think he should talk to us.
Yeah, Kweku, we need to have a chat there. 12,000 connections that are completely useless. So first off, I would focus on growing your network with people who are useful. And then a bit like Melissa's doing, yeah, once you reach a certain point on LinkedIn, you have to kind of constantly start cleaning up because you get zombies in your account. And if you're running a big account, so say for an example, Melissa, she runs audio events all the time, right? Melissa wants a whole audience to see it, but over time, people drift in and out of activity. So what happens is, let's say I grew my network and every person in my network was a poster as at today. In a year's time, like 10% of them would be zombies. And in another year's time, another 10%. So just standing still with your connections means it goes stale. So you're constantly, once you reach a point, having to refresh your network with new people who are alive and well. So withdraw, Kweku, but replace, don't just remove. And when you withdraw your connections, does LinkedIn continue to suggest the person? No, they don't generally. They'll still be there and you can still connect with them. So that's all fine. And Kweku, if you want to know how to get rid of them, go to My Network, and then where the invites are, click Manage, and there's a Sent tab, and you can click Withdraw. And you just click Withdraw, and then another click, and then another one, and you just keep doing it like that. It's a bit of a manual operation. Joe Humphrey, I usually give it 2 weeks before withdrawal just to allow for holidays or sickness. Yeah, if somebody hasn't accepted you in 2 weeks, they've either fell off planet Earth for a while, but your connection request has probably been lost in the noise. It's probably been buried.
Dean, would you like to wrap up then?
Well, yes, I will. I'll shut up, Vasco. I've got another call at 4. That's why Vasco's telling me what time it is.
I'm acting like a dad. Sorry, guys.
So, yeah, thank you for joining us today. I hope this has been helpful, give you some things and some food for thought. Like I said, the slides I've used today are from our Social Selling Academy. If you want to know more about that, it's end-to-end process to get clients and use LinkedIn and all the features, the bells and whistles. Drop me a DM and I'll send you some details. Melissa, yes, the LinkedIn does need to update the withdraw feature. The only problem with that, Melissa, is it would probably encourage some other terrible behavior we don't want if they made it easy to do things in bulk. Anyway, you've all been fantastic. So thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate every one of you for joining me. All the support you give me to my content and my profile, you are very much appreciated. You're all superstars. And Vasco, it's nice to have you back, COVID free.
Yeah, finally.
We'll do some more of these. Thanks, everybody.
Right. Nice seeing you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.